Welcome to Pastel 101, Pastel Supplies for Beginners. Hey everyone, I'm Viv, this is Art with Viv, and welcome to my month of September, which will be back to basics. Each week, I'm going to go over the basics of a different medium. We're starting with pastel on this first week, and we are going to go over the basic supplies that you will need to help bring those beautiful pastels to life. Now, whether you're a beginner or you just want to sort of sharpen up your skills, I think that there'll be something for everyone in this series. There's going to be 3 videos. This one about basic supplies. Wednesday, there will be one on the basic techniques so that we can kind of help you use your supplies, know how to use them, get those effects that you want to get. And then on Friday, we're going to kind of put the supplies together and the techniques together, and we're going to do a easy tutorial, and I'm going to be live on Friday. So I will be able to answer your questions on Friday if you have any, and we'll be able to do a nice pastel. It's going to be really simple, just using all of those techniques that we learn on Wednesday. But today we're just going to go over supplies. So let's just go ahead and go to the studio and get started. So I have some pastels here. I wanted some examples of some pastels. And just to start with the most basic thing, all pastels is a little bit of pigment, well, a lot of pigment, and it's bound with some gum or resin, and then it's compressed really hard into a stick, or it can be in a pencil or a square, or you can even have them in a pan. So this is a full stick of pastels, but you can also buy them by the half sticks, and I'll show. That's the difference. Whole sticks are more expensive. Of course, you get more pastel, but if you wanted to buy a kit, I would get half sticks to start off with, because you can get more colors for the same price as just a few of the full sticks. You can also buy individual sticks at like Dick Blick or some of those places. So there's different options that you have. So there's 3 types of pastels. We have hard pastels, soft pastels, and extra soft pastels. Now, hard pastels I'm going to show you first. They have a firm feel. They deposit less pigment on the paper, so they don't fill up the tooth of the paper. And you'll find out why that's important a little bit later on. They are best for underpainting and sketching. They're slightly harder to blend. So here are some of the square. These are semi-hard. I don't have any full hard pastels, but these are semi-hard. So some examples though, since I only have these 2. I have this semi-hard pastel, which is made from Gallery, and then I have pastel pencils. But you can also get the new pastels, which are also square, little square chunks. You can get Conte crayons, which are also squares, and then you can get Prang pastelos. All of those are some examples. By no means, that's not all of them, but those are just some examples of some hard pastels. And so I have these. My suggestion for a beginner is either to get a small set of these type with the square that has a good color range, and these are pretty good. They're not overly expensive. They're Gallery hard pastels or semi-hard pastels, or you can do pastel pencils. Now, most beginners are a lot more comfortable with the pencils because for obvious reasons, we've been writing our name. We have been using pencils since, kindergarten, as soon as we could pick up a pencil. So a lot of people, a lot of beginners, they might want to start with the pastel pencils, which are hard pastels. These pastel pencils, they are great for details on top of your soft pastels, or you can do a whole painting with just the pastel pencils. Now this is a set, I think, of 72. I would not get a large set like this to begin with. I would just get a smaller set that has a good range of colors. Again, I'll link that. I'm going to make a PDF for my patrons over on Patreon, and I will show them and give that for them to download, and they will have that as a resource. All right, next we have soft pastels, and I'm just showing you what I have. I don't have every kind, so I'm just showing you what I have. And these are Mungyo pastels. They are soft. It's a set of 30 colors. And these are considered half sticks. They're not they're not full sticks. This is half sticks, right? These are handmade. They are very soft. They release a lot of pigment onto the paper. It will fill up the tooth of the paper pretty quickly. They blend beautifully. They are wonderful. And so we have these soft pastels as an example. This is and then I also, again, I told you can buy them single in kit. You can buy them in kits or sets. You can buy them single. Here is a drawer out of my pastel cabinet. I bought all of these as singles. They're a little more expensive as singles rather than get them in sets, but you can get the exact colors that you would like. So you don't have to buy a bunch. You can just buy a few to begin with. But yeah, these are just ones that I have bought individually from open stock. And that is just one drawer out of my pastel drawer. And those are all soft pastels. Those are Rembrandts, Sennelier. What else do I got? I think just Rembrandt and Sennelier. Now we've got the extra soft pastels. They are soft and velvety. They fill up the tooth of the paper very quickly, and they can be pricey. Now the only reason I can afford this box was because I got it on a Black Friday deal, and it was like half price, and it's 120 colors, and they're half sticks. So let me show you these. And they are gorgeous. I don't know. Let's see if I turn it this way so you can see more of the colors. I love this set. They are extra soft. They are crumbly. They are beautiful and velvety. But like I said, I would not be able to afford this unless I got it on a deal. Again, these will fill up the tooth of your paper pretty quickly. So just keep that in mind. A little bit goes a long way, and they are more prone to breakage because they are so soft. Now another kind of extra soft pastel are pan pastels. I love these. These do well for covering a large area. They are super soft, and all they are is they are pressed into a cake inside of a little jar. Not a little jar, but now you can apply these with your fingers, but I recommend you use sponges, and they have special applicators. These aren't all the kinds of applicators. This is just an example of some of the applicators, and they really look like makeup sponges, but you use that to apply your beautiful pan pastels. They have smaller sets than this one. This is just the set that I have. But you can get a smaller set to start off with. And these aren't necessary. These are optional. But I thought since I do have some, I would show them to you. Again, they're extra soft pastels. All right, the next thing we're going to go over is 3 important things to consider about paper. And I have a selection of paper here. Just some samples of some paper that I've going to show you now. I've already colored on some of these. So let's go over the 3 things that you'll want to look for when you're buying pastel paper. You'll want to have toned paper, which means you want it to be colored, have a color to it. Some people will use white paper. You can use watercolor paper. I suggest doing a wash over your watercolor paper to tone it, to make it a color. White just looks so jarring whenever you paint with pastels on it, but if that's the effect you want, then of course it is, then go for it. Go for it. I'm getting my papers here separated so that you can tell I've got some different kinds here. And you also want it to have a tooth. Now what that means is, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but this has a tooth. It has valleys and bumps, and that holds the pastel onto the paper, and it prevents you from having to use fixative, theoretically. Now, the more tooth that the paper has, the more little crevices and bumps and roughness that it has, the more pastel layers you can layer on top of it. If it doesn't have that many, then you're only going to be able to do a few layers of pastel before the tooth fills up. Once the tooth fills up, you're not going to be able to apply any more pastel unless you spray some spray fixative over it to wear some of those layers down or remove some of the pastel. So that's the second thing you want to look for. You want toned paper and you want it to have a tooth. The third thing is you want acid-free or archival, especially if you plan on selling your artwork or you want to keep it for a lifetime. Acid-free archival paper is the best. That way it won't deteriorate over time. So I want to tell you about the different types of pastel paper. We have Canson Mi-Tints. That's this one right here. It's probably one of the most popular, especially for beginners. It has a good tooth on it. It's not overly toothy, but it has a good, decent tooth. It comes in many different colors. This is just an example of some of the colors, but it comes in many more tones than this. It is affordable. You can get it in packs. You can get it in single sheets that are really big, and you can cut those down or just use the really big sheets if you want to do an extra large pastel. It also comes, did I say in pads? If I didn't, it comes in pads. It comes in packs of different assorted colors, and it also, you can buy it by the sheet. So that is the Canson Mi-Tints, and that's probably best for beginners. Then the next is velour. Now, velour is like velvet. It feels like velvet. It is a flocked paper. It has really good tooth. It can be expensive, and I'll link to where you can find velour. I love doing pet portraits, animals on velour just because of the soft, buttery look. I mean, it just looks like velvet when you paint on it. One of the drawbacks, if you would call it a drawback, is it doesn't blend. Pastel will not blend well on top of the velour paper, because once you put that pastel in there, that flocking, those little tiny fibers, they just sort of lock in the pastel, so it doesn't blend well. Like if you in the traditional way of just blending with your fingers, you're gonna have to layer it to get it to blend. But I still love this paper. There's how it looks so velvety. I'm going to show you in just a minute how each one of these papers look when you actually draw on them with some pastels. Next is sanded paper. The surface has been treated with a sandpaper-like texture with a grit. This is very, very popular among pastel artists. It's probably one of the most popular is the sanded paper, and it will come in like a really fine grit, a really fine feel, or all the way up to really rough. Now, just keep in mind, the rougher that your paper is, the more pastel layers it will hold, but it will also use up your pastels a lot faster. So I like to stick with the finer grit of the pastel sanded paper. It also, here's a pack of it. I just got this pack out so that you could see all the different colors. This comes in a pack. You can get it also in single sheets, and you can also get Pastel Matte, which is very similar to this, but it is thicker paper and it's more like a cardboard backing on it, is what I'm going to call it. But this one comes in all different shades, and this is Color Fix Rainbow Pack, and it's by Art Spectrum. It's one of my favorites. You'll get 20 sheets, and here's all the different colors that you can get. So that's what I've gotten for myself. I haven't bought any large sheets of this. I'm just sticking with this for right now. So I'm going to put this to the side, and then I just want to show you the difference in how each one of these looks when you use your pastels on it. So before I show you how each one of these looks, the pastel actually looks on the paper when you actually paint on the paper, I just wanted to show you some of my artwork on each type of paper. Now the first one is a cute little pug. I did that on Mi-Tints, Canson Mi-Tints paper, and it was a light pale gray background. Then I did my bulldog, that is Buck, my bulldog. He has since passed over the Rainbow Bridge. I did him on a pale green velour paper that was very flocked. You can see how sort of soft and smudgy the look is for that kind of paper. And then I did a Clemson Tiger for one of my friends on sanded paper, and you can see how the pastel paper is much more painterly looking. That's what I'm going to call it. But I did use a lot of broken color on that as well. So those are some examples of artwork that I've done on each kind of paper, just so that you can see. But now I am going to actually show you in real time what it looks like when you draw on these. And I'm going to show you what it looks like with the hard pastels, what hard pastels look like on each of them. We're going to start off with our little squares. Let's do this light blue. So make sure I got it on the right side. Now, Canson Me-Tints paper does have a right side and a wrong side, but you can paint on both. But the right side is the one that has the most texture. So we're just going to see how this hard pastel, you can still see some of the paper through. It doesn't lay down a lot of pigment right on that paper. And you can see the valleys in it. Now, if we do this on velour paper, this is the velour paper, can you see the difference, how smooth and buttery that looks? Let me see if I can get this just a little bit closer so you can see a little better. See how smooth and buttery that looks? And you can see the actual pattern on the Canson paper. And now we're going to do the sanded paper. Now, the sanded to me is sort of like a mix between the Canson and the velour. You can still see the background through it, but it goes on so smooth and buttery. So that was the hard pastels. Now let's do a pastel pencil. Let's see if I can find a blue. So we'll just keep it in the same color family. So on the Canson Me-Tints paper, let's see, do I have it so you can see it? Yeah, that's what the pastel pencils, and you can also maybe try to color in some. On the velour, you can see it's just a smooth, continuous line. It's more solid. I just call it buttery. And then, of course, on the sanded paper, it's still a mix between these two. This one, you can still see the paper background through it. This one is just like a continuous, almost solid line of pigment. And then this one is between the two. It's a little bit of the background showing, but it still has a smooth look. All right, so now let's do the soft pastels. I'll just leave this here. Let's do a soft pastel. Let's do it on the Canson first. Now you can see there's much more pigment coming off just with the strokes here than there was here. But again, you can still see the paper through it. Oh, look at that. Look how much pigment. That is so rich and thick. So much pigment is coming out on there. And the same with this. Oh, and plus it feels really, really nice. Now let's show you the extra soft pastels. An example of that. Let me find a blue. Yes. Let's just go ahead and, now these are extra soft. Remember, these are a little prone to breaking easier because they are so soft. And the reason they're so soft is because they have much more pigment and much less binder in them. So these are the extra soft. And you may not be able to visually tell the difference, but the feel of it is so much smoother. I mean, it is just wonderful. So that's how an extra soft pastel will look on there. And now let's try one of our pan pastels, and we'll also do that with a bluish green. Let's get this bluish green out here. Uh-oh. And I'm going to apply that with one of these little applicators. So we've got this. Let's pull this down so you can see. And you'll just apply it. Now look how this is another example of the extra soft. And look how fast it fills up the tooth. You can't even see the little valleys because it is so soft, it just sinks right down into those valleys. Now this is even softer than this one, and you can tell that by how fast it filled up the tooth of that paper. So let's put this on our velour. Now see how it's where I first touch it, it's really rich and thick, but then as I pull it, it gets lighter because this paper grabs the pastel and it keeps it pretty much where you put it. So it doesn't blend out like the other pastels do on this paper. That's one of the things about this paper. It stays right where you put it. So now let's try it on the sanded paper. And look, it is already filling up the tooth, and this is sanded paper. Sanded paper usually takes a lot to fill up the tooth. But now you can see how gorgeous that extra soft pan pastel is. So I just wanted you to see how they react and how they look on different kinds of paper. So now let's go to some miscellaneous supplies. Let me put up all of this and we'll just go over some miscellaneous supplies that we will need. All right, you'll need an easel. You'll want to paint with your paper at an upright angle. You don't want to do your pastel flat on the table. You want that excess pastel to be able to fall down the paper, and some people put like a little tray, and I might show you that in a separate video. They'll put a little tray at the bottom of their easel to catch all their extra dust. Some are even get really creative and they wrap it up, roll it up, and have new pastels made out of it. And they kind of press it together with a little bit of water or whatever, and they're just, creative. So you'll need an easel. I'm just using this small easel so that you can see it. Let's see if we can back up some, so that you can actually see it. So we got the small easel. Oh, excuse me. You'll need a kneaded eraser. Let me show you. I have one here. Let's take the easel away for a second. Now, kneaded erasers, these are the friend of everybody, of every artist. They are just like little putty, little gray pieces of putty, and they are great if you have too much pastel and you want to get rid of it. You can just pick it up with the kneaded eraser. It is great for removing mistakes. I love the kneaded erasers. Then when it gets a little dirty, you just knead it and knead that dirt in there. Knead all that pigment back in there until it's clean, and then you can do more. But yeah, everyone needs a kneaded eraser for almost every type of art that you do. I love these things. So you'll need a kneaded eraser. A blending stump is optional. It's just a rolled up piece of type paper, and it will help you blend your color. See how that blends that color together. Of course, you can also use your fingers. That's up to you. Then you'll need hand cloths so that you can wipe your hands. Now, some artists use gloves whenever they do their work. I do not. So I keep hand wipes. Here, I'll show you what kind I've got. I keep little hand wipes ready and available so that I can clean my hands, keep my pastels clean so that they don't get dirty. You can use tissue. I don't have any tissue here, but just any kind of tissue will help you blend it. Another thing to help blend, which I don't have on that list, are cotton swabs. Cotton swabs will blend. See how beautifully those blend. So a cotton swab, if you don't have any tissue. You'll need a backer board to attach your paper to sit up in the easel, and you'll want to do it with some low tack tape. Now, I don't have low tack tape, so what I do to make my tape low tack is this is my shirt. I just put it on my shirt and pull it up, and that takes some of the sticky off, and then I can secure it to my board, and it will come up easier than, it won't tear my paper. That's the reason you want low tack. I don't have low tack, but I'm making low tack by just taping it to my shirt first, and that gets rid of some of the sticky. So you'll want to be able to attach your paper to your board. If you don't have, that, then you can use these bulldog clips. My paper's not big enough. Your paper will have to, obviously, it'll be a little bit bigger, but you can also use clips to put your paper on, as long as your paper is big enough to reach to the edge. What else can you use? Oh, a nice bristle brush is nice to have so that you can scrub off excess. You get a little bit too much, your tooth is getting filled up, the tooth of your paper, and you can just brush some of that off with a nice hog bristle brush. Or if You can use a really soft bristle brush to do blending. See how that'll blend right on your paper? You can also use that, a soft bristle brush, like a watercolor brush or something like that. Well, let's see, what else? Oh, fixative. Now this fixative is optional. You don't have to have fixative. It can be a good thing and a bad thing. It will darken your colors sometimes, and it will also eliminate your really palest highlights. So if you use workable fixative, it will prevent your work from smudging, but remember, you'll have to come back and add those highlights. At least that's what I do. Once I put my fixative on, then I'll go back and touch up the highlights where they have disappeared from being sprayed with this. And I'm going to have a separate video just about tips on how to work with workable fixative. Now there's other brands. This is just the brand I've always used, but there are other brands. And you can also use hairspray, but I do not recommend using hairspray if you want to keep your work for a long time, because hairspray can eventually break down and it will cause your paper to disintegrate. I hope y'all have enjoyed these tips and you have learned a little bit about some of the supplies. I will give you even more information on the next video, which is all about beginner techniques, and I'm going to have a little homework for my patrons. Again, if you want bonus content related to this video and all the rest of the videos for this week, then you might consider joining my patron family. I love my family. They're very supportive of me. I love my patrons. All right, I will see y'all Wednesday. Bye. And be good to yourself. Don't get too stressed out. It's just art. It's meant to be relaxing, okay?